Hey guys, Triple B here. I know today we normally do the weekly news roundup, but there hasn't really been heaps that came out. It's mostly just seeing these secret rares and some merchandise coming out, but we did get to see the full Obsidian Flames English set list, so we're going to be going through that today actually. Quickly skim through the other news though, so if there's anything that kind of catches your eyes, don't want you guys missing out on it. The ruler of the Black Flame Pokemon Center merchandise got revealed, so we're getting Charizard EX deck box sleeves and playmat, as well as Tyranitar deck box sleeves, Glimora deck box and sleeves, and that deck box and sleeves. Got to see full art Ice Cube, but that's going to be in the Obsidian Flame set. A alt art Ninetales, also in the Obsidian Flame set. And then McDonald's is doing a Pokemon TCG promotion starting in August. So there's some interesting cards included in there. We're getting the starter Pokemons as like alternate holo versions of themselves. So Sprigato being in there is kind of interesting if you're wanting to play Meowscarada. The rest of it though, pretty standard cards. So it's just kind of like, hey, here's a Happy Meal, get some stuff. But if you do want the starter Pokemons as holos, there's a way that you can get them now, which is pretty interesting. So a few months out. Wow. 1 month out, I guess, to August. That's not too far, actually. We did also get to see all 33 of the ruler of the Black Flame secret rares, so it's pretty safe to assume these should be in our Obsidian Flame set, as this entire set is being captured into it. But let's jump into the Obsidian Flame set list. We've kind of covered most of this as they've been revealed in Japan, and then now it's just confirmation as to what's going to be in the list. We are seeing a lot of the starter deck EX Pokemons included in here. I'm going to be honest, there's not heaps in this set I'm super excited about. Like we're seeing a Blossom. It's kind of interesting. It's like an Ambipom. Flip a coin for each energy attached to it, 90 for each heads. It's a stage 2, so a little bit awkward to get up to. We have Ambipom that does this, 60 damage instead, but it's got an ability that it might not take damage. I feel like that's just the better coin flip Pokemon, to be honest. Scyther, it evolves up into a Caesar we're getting in the list. Shuckle, Masquerin, I'm kind of just going to skim past most of these, to be honest. If there's anything that kind of catches my eyes, I'll stop on it. But if I'm not stopping, kind of just take it as it's a card to skip. There is a Decidueye EX, which I know some people are hyped on. It's a very cool Pokemon, and it's unfortunate it's not getting a better EX card. Its ability lets it move from the bench to your active spot, or vice versa. So if there's cards that come into play where it's like it needs to move from the bench to the active, Decidueye can help proc them. Being a stage 2 EX Pokemon though, it's a little bit awkward, and the attack doing 130 damage, 30 to a bench Pokemon, it's not great. Like, it's not even two-shotting into stuff, so I don't really think it'll see play. If you feel differently, please let me know in the comments down below, because I'm always happy to have a conversation and be proven wrong. We're all learning a bit more every day, so maybe there's something I'm missing in there. Getting a Steenie, Serena line, nothing really jumping out. Smoliv line. Toedscruel EX is an interesting one. So its ability, Protective Charm, is going to prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to all of your Pokemon that have energy attached. So similar to, I think it was Espeon VMAX that had this ability previously, it's a great way to prevent Sableye, as well as things coming out and like paralyzing you, discarding energy from your guys. It's nice to have. It's a stage 1 Pokemon, so you can switch into it with Zoroark. You could sneak it into some decks that way, or just run it as a 1/1 line if you're really concerned about effects. Also, the fact that it's going to prevent Star Requiem from Giratina V-Star, that's pretty helpful, I've got to say. The attack, also for 2 grass, Colony Rush, 80 damage, 40 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon with grass energy attached. You could use Fortress to just spread damage around. You could use Cherrim to spread damage around. Being an EX Pokemon, it does evolve from a single prize Pokemon, so just accelerate energy to this with Cherrim before you evolve up, then evolve up. You've got energy spread around everywhere. You're in a good spot. You can be doing some pretty solid numbers. 40 for each bench, that's what, capped at 200, 280, you can one-shot V-Star Pokemon. It's nice. Grass Pokemon as well, so you can boost up its HP with Kricketune. It's definitely a card I'll be playing around with. What about you? Getting a Capsakid, 2 Capsakids, and a Scavalian. Scavalian being a grass and a fire type for grass double colorless, 110. Definitely an inclusion for a Zoro box deck if you're still trying to make that work. 110 with super effective Glassives, scales up to 330. That's solid, and it covers 2 typings. So, nice inclusion. We're getting the Charmander line. They will be evolving into a Dark Terra type Charizard EX, so that'll be listed a little bit further in the set. But if you're keen on that, these are probably the ones you'll want to be picking up. Don't really think we have other Charmanders available. We did get them in the Pokemon Go set. Can't recall them off the top of my head, but they might be ones to consider as well. Charizard does definitely seem like an interesting deck to play around with. We're going to get another Charizard EX in Pokemon 151. We had the Pogo Charizard as well that doubles the energy, well, doubles fire energy. So interesting concept to play around with. They're all going to be evolving from the same Charmander, so you can have kind of a split evolution line in there. Vulpix into Ninetales lets you put 9 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon for 2 fire energy. It exists, I guess. There's an Entei, which I'm always keen on the Johto beasts, but this one I'm unfortunately not going to be recommending. Its ability means that as long as it's in the active spots, your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks do 20 less. That's kind of cool. And they attack for 3 colorless, doing 50 and then 20 more damage for each fire energy attached to this Pokemon. Isn't bad for GLC or like a theme deck format, but in standard, I don't really see this being relevant. We're getting a Numel into Camerupt, 50 damage. Each player discards the top card of their deck. This does 100 more damage for each energy card discarded in this way. We effectively had an Entei card that used to have this attack in, I think it was Lost Thunder, and it only did 80, but it's a basic Pokemon. Having it as a stage 1, being capped at 250, like you're not one-shotting V-Star Pokemon unless you have a Choice Belt and they're hitting an energy. It's interesting concept for like a Hail Mary rogue deck, but I don't think it'll really be seeing play. Victini EX, I'm not even going to read it, I'll be completely honest. We're getting a Darmanitan, same thing, we're going to skim past it. Chandelure, one of my favorite Pokemon. Unfortunately, this one, probably not. So it does 10 damage and then 50 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. There's a lot of things that have similar attacks that aren't stage 2s. I don't see this seeing play, unfortunately. Heatmore does what? 30 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So similar to Chandelure, lower number, but it's a basic Pokemon. That has a higher chance of seeing play than Chandelure, but I don't really think this will be seeing any either. And yeah, I think this is where we get to the point where we just skim through again. Ice-Q EX, so being a fire-type Pokemon, but paying the attack cost with water is interesting. So it gives you a bit of type coverage for water decks if you'd like, and being a Terra Pokemon, when it's on the bench, it's not going to get hurt from damage, which is kind of cool. Scalding Block does 160 damage. You do discard an energy from this Pokemon, but the defending Pokemon can't attack during your opponent's next turn. So you can be half hitting into things and then forcing your opponent to find a way to retreat out. That's pretty solid. Getting a new Charcadet has 70 HP. We got an 80 HP one in Paldea Evolved, so I think that's still the optimal one. This does have a 1 retreat cost though, so off the top of my head, I can't recall the 80 HP one. Maybe this replaces it as the more optimal one, but it's an option. The Armarouge it evolves into isn't good though. If it's in the active and gets hit, it burns your opponent. Base damage of 70 on its attack though, so it exists, I guess. A bunch of water Pokemon in here. Again, if I'm skimming past anything and you're like, oh, that guy looked really cool, the list will be posted on PokeBeach, so feel free to have a look at it yourself. But we're kind of just looking at the things I think might impact the meta. We are seeing a Palafin. It's a stage 1 Pokemon. This I could see seeing a little bit of play in water decks, I'll be honest. So Jet Punch does base damage of 30 and 30 more to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. The second attack, though, does 210 for 2 water energy, but only if it moved from the bench to the active. It's a single prize Pokemon, and hitting 210 means it can be one-shotting base V or base EX Pokemon. Can be a handy addition to have, especially just the fact that it's a single prize Pokemon, so something like Chin Pao, where it's like, well, I want another option to be able to go into. Maybe it gets a spot in that, but since it's a stage 1, you're giving up 2 slots. I guess time will tell on that one. We are getting a new Magnemite, Magneton, Magnezone. No abilities on them, and the attacks are Tyranitar EX. It's a Terra type, it's a Lightning type, it's interesting. Being Terra, it's not getting hurt when it's on the bench. The attack for 1 fighting, 120 damage, discard the top 2 cards of your deck. And for 2 fighting, Toll Rampage, 150 damage. If any of your bench Pokemon have damage counters on them, 100 more, so 250 for 2 fighting. It's interesting. Gives you a little bit of type coverage. So in fighting decks, you could have this to hit into like water or into Lugia decks for some additional damage. Lugia being fighting resistant, it's an interesting inclusion to have, I suppose. We don't really have an interesting Larvitar or Pupitar though, and that's where stage 2 EX Pokemon are kind of shining. Like Gardevoir works because Curly is good. Tyranitar is probably not going to work because the rest of it's okay. We're getting Dynamo, Electrike, Electros, a Thunderous that's effectively like Manaphy, but only when it's in the active spot, a Toxel, Toxtricity, Palmot EX, what else are we getting in here? Some new Tadbulbs, so maybe they become ones to play with Bellybolt EX instead of these guys. And Bellybolt has an ability here, so prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks of your opponent's lightning Pokemon. Interesting. If we start seeing like Miraidon seeing a lot of play after rotation, maybe this becomes an interesting inclusion, just being able to have it as a 1-1 line and set it up, set it in the active. Your opponent doesn't have a response to it. You just win the game because they deck themselves out. So it's interesting. We've had Bronzongs that have had that ability before, and they saw some play, so we'll find out. Maybe time we'll see some play with it. Clefable EX is an interesting one, though. The ability means... Clefable EX is a pretty interesting one, though. Your Pokemon that have any psychic energy attached to them have no retreat cost. Could be an interesting inclusion into like Gardevoir EX just to give you some pivot potential. Mostly thinking, though, for the Clefable that came out in, I think it was Silver Tempest, accelerates energy out, so Clefable, or Clefairy, I should say, in the active, accelerate psychic energy to all your Clefairy on the bench, bounce them around, you accelerate more energy out. It's just a great way to be able to manually retreat and not having to pay energy to do it. It's interesting. The attack, 170 damage, move any amount of psychic energy from your Pokemon to another Pokemon in any way you'd like. So you can kind of be saving things, maybe take the 3 energy off of this one, put it onto another Clefairy, so it's not like as big of a target. It's like, well, you can kill my 2-prize Pokemon, or you can kill the one that has all the energy, or you kill this and then the energy's still in play and then my Clefairy comes up and does a really big number. It's definitely an interesting concept to be had there. We are getting a new Togepi line. So we previously got one that Togepi, you play it, you heal 10. Togetic, you evolve into it, you heal 30. And now we're getting a Togekiss that once during your turn, you can draw until you have 8 cards in your hand. So these two, I don't think we'll see play. This Togekiss, though, if we get a Togekiss EX in the future, or if we start seeing healing become more of a relevant thing, I could see this being an interesting like 1-1-1 line to include in decks. Something like Gudra V-Star, or even Kuparaja EX, where they're tanking hits, a little bit of healing, and then just having this as like solid draw later in the game. You get Iono down to 1, and then you just draw until you have 8. That's pretty clutch. Espeon, I love my EVs, but these new EV cards, I think they're more so just a collector's piece. We're not even going to read them, I'll be honest. On my Mawile, I was about to say Milotic. Mawile, though, could be an interesting inclusion for Gardevoir EX after rotation. So after rotation, we're going to be losing the Chilling Rain Gardevoir, as well as Celebration Zacian. So we need some new attackers for it. People have been looking at Drifloon, which does damage based off of damage counters on it, which can be a little bit risky, though. You put a Bravery Charm on it, boost its health, put a bunch of damage on it. Your opponent just has to go, okay, lost Vacuum, that's now knocked out. Mawile, though, is going to do 30 more damage for each psychic energy attached to this Pokemon. So scaling up similar to Gardevoir and Zacian. Doesn't have a base damage, though, so it's just scaling up by that 30. Has 100 health, though. You could accelerate up to 4 energy out with Gardevoir before it's being knocked out. We're going to be getting a Stadium in the future that lets you discard a psychic energy from your hand to heal 30 from all of your psychic Pokemon. This could be something to definitely hang on to if you pull them. Maybe get 1 or 2. I don't see them being an expensive card, and could be an interesting one in the future. Grumpig exists. Lunatone. If you have any Soul Rock in play, prevent all effects of Stadiums done to your Pokemon, and then there's a Soul Rock. So if you're really concerned about Path to the Peak, there is like a 1-1 line you could be running to prevent it. It's cool. It also means that you could be playing this and then playing high counts of Path in your own deck, but having abilities, so not being impacted by Path, but hurting your opponent with it. It's an interesting concept. Claydol, Vespiquen EX has Recovery Pheromones, heals 60 damage from one of your Pokemon. Second attack, 3 Grass. Phantom Queen, 200 damage. Put 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Interesting. Kind of screws over Lost Box, which is funny. Sinistea, Poltegeist. Poltegeist for like control decks might see some play. So you can put 2 in any combination of item or Pokemon tool cards from your discard pile into your hand. Getting some new Houndstones. And I think this is where we just scroll for a while. Stunfisk having an ability, if this is in the active and is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, even if it's knocked out, if this Pokemon has a tool attached to it, put 5 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. It's all right. Like for GLC, I could see it seeing play. And yeah, I think we kind of just scroll. Glimora, interesting one. Its ability Dust Field. When it's in the active spot, your opponent has to discard until they only have 3 bench Pokemon. It's pretty cool. It's like a better Collapse Stadium. Run it with Ting Lu. Chuck this in the active, break their bench, switch back into Ting Lu, shut off their abilities. It's kind of funny. Charizard EX we did mention before, and it is the flagship Pokemon of this set, so likely what we'll be getting on the Battle Pass of PTCGL, at least for this season, is kind of my thoughts. It's a Terra-type Pokemon, so again, if it's on the bench, doesn't take damage. The ability, though, when you evolve up into this Pokemon, you can search your deck for 3 basic fire energy and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you'd like. So solid energy acceleration and easily pays the attack cost, being just 2 fire, so you use the ability, put 2 on here, put 1 on something else. You're setting yourself up pretty effectively. 180 damage and does 30 more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. Being a dark type, you're hitting for weakness into Mew VMAX, which is still seeing quite a bit of play, and Gardevoir EX, which most people are considering the best deck in format at the moment. So Charizard might be dethroning that pretty soon. Having just inbuilt acceleration from deck, it's pretty solid. Getting some new Paldean Woopers. Cool cards, not good cards. Houndoom and Houndowers. The Houndoom EX came from one of the starter sets, so it's okay. Absol EX is another one of those cards where it's interesting concepts, but just feels like poor execution. The attack seems like it should be an ability. You get to look at the top 3 cards of either player's deck and put them back in any order. Like if it was when you play this from your hand to your bench, do that, okay. And then Curse Slug, 100 damage if your opponent has 3 or fewer cards in their hand, 120 more. 2 dark and a colorless, though, getting tapped at 220. We've got things that do that better, like Miraidon EX can just do that, has Electro Generator to charge itself up and an inbuilt ability to set up your bench. Absol has nothing. And let's see. Yeah, the rest is just kind of here. We're getting Mawile that does let you discard a special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Kind of cool. So up against Arceus decks, if they've got a double turbo energy attached, if they go first, attach that, they're in the active, you can use this, bounce it off. 90 HP, so it is searchable with Level Ball. The fact that it's limited to the active, though, I'm not too sure. And what else have we got in here? Kingambit. This I could definitely see being an interesting rogue deck. Not sure where I'm clicking on it. It's in Japanese. The text's over here. If your opponent's active Pokemon has 4 or more damage counters on it, it's knocked out. So using things like Gapejaw Bog and Radiant Alakazam, you can easily set knockouts up and just pay 1 energy to do it. Is a stage 2 Pokemon, but we've got things like Adamant where it just discard 2 steel, search your deck for 2 cards, or even Arita, search your deck for a water and an item card. So like get a water Pokemon like Manaphy or Luminion to help just set yourself up, and then Rare Candy to get into this. Definitely an interesting concept to play around with, and there'll be some fun lists coming out around it, I'm sure. Melmetal EX being another starter deck EX Pokemon. It's okay. Revroom EX, interesting one. So you can attach up to 4 Pokemon Tool cards to this. I like that. And its attack 170, and then you take 30 less damage from attacks during your opponent's turn. So you could theoretically attach up to 4 tool cards that make you take 30 less damage from attacks. If you're a stage 1 Pokemon coming out in Pokemon 151, use the attack, take another 30 less, you're taking 150 less. I think you know what deck I'm excited to play for. Or what set I'm excited for. Dragonite EX, another one of those cards where it's just, it seems like a bit of a missed opportunity. It is a stage 2 Pokemon. We don't really have good Dragonair or Dratini cards. Terra Pokemon, if it's on the bench, doesn't take damage. Wing Attack, colorless energy, 70. And Meteor Break, 140. Flip a coin if heads, 140 more damage. If tails, it does nothing. Or it can't attack during your next turn. It's okay. It could be an inclusion in something like Regidrago V-Star, but when we've already got Giratina V-Star that just guarantees 280 at the cost of having to loss on 2 energy, but this on a coin flip, maybe you don't even hit 280 and maybe you can't attack on your next turn. It just seems like a worse option. Altaria, though, being another dragon Pokemon that could be included in Regidrago. Sleepy Song, 110 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. During Pokemon checkup, they have to flip 2 coins instead of 1. So you're not doing big damage, but you're doing a bit of chip, and then you follow up with another attack to finish them off on the next turn. So like you could use this, put them to sleep on the next turn, use Gujar's Rolling Iron attack, do 200, finish the knockout. You're taking 80 less on the next turn, then use this, put them to sleep again. This card I'm actually pretty excited about. We are getting a Pidgeot EX, so Pidgeotto to evolve up into it, and then Pidgeot EX. It's effectively just a repeatable Arceus V-Star. So it has the ability Quick Search. Once during your turn, you can search your deck for a card, put it into your hand. It's not a V-Star Pokemon though, so it's not limited to once per game. It's just every single turn you can be using this. You can only use one per turn though, so you can't have like 4 Pidgeot and just go, I want this card, I want this card, I want this card, and this card. Just one, but pretty cool inclusion to have, especially with Stage 2 Pokemon seeing more play. So if you're running, let's say, Excalibur in your deck, so you've already got Rita to search out rare candies, you've already got Stage 2s in there, high counts of rare candies, just checking a 1-1 line of Pidgey and Pidgeotto, or not Pidgeotto, Pidgeot, evolve up into it, and then it's just like, oh, I need a superior energy retrieval. I have it. Oh, I need an energy. I have it. Like, you're just giving up 2 deck spaces for it. Decks are starting to run Arceus V-Star for the Chin-Pow list, so just swapping it out with the Pidgeot is kind of where my head's at for this card. Are getting a new Eevee. Like that. They're just kind of lackluster cards though, but good for the collection. What else is in here? Yeah, I just went past Squovit. I know. Arvin. What? It says Arvin's in it. So I can do art for it? Brassius, shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw cards until you have 1 more card in your hand, then you shuffled in. That's interesting. So if you're running a deck that gets into pretty big hands, Lost Zone often, or Lost Box getting into large hands, maybe it's an interesting one-off to include. Gita, this card I am kind of keen for. So until the end of your turn, you can't attack, but you get to search your deck for 2 basic energy cards and attach them to one of your Pokemon. So the first thing that came to mind for me when I saw this is you run it with Diancie. So like quad Diancie, quad something else. You've got Diancie in the active. It means your opponent can't use gust cards like Boss's Orders to bring something up. So for example, Duraludon VMAX. Usually you're setting it up with Arceus V-Star, making your opponent play an 8 prize game. Sometimes it's a little bit awkward though. Your Arceus getting knocked out or you're missing attachment for turn to the Arceus. But if you got Diancies and you've got high counts of Pokegear, get a Duraludon on the bench, get a Diancie in the active, Pokegear, get into this, use this, get 2 energy out, attach another energy for turn. Your opponent knocks out the Diancie, that's fine. You just put the Duraludon in the active, you evolve it up on the following turn, you're manually charging up another one in the background, or finding ways to set up into like Rapid Strike Mustard, not Rapid Strike, Single Strike Mustard, get another one on your bench that way and manually charge it up. High counts of Raihan. I'm going to be playing around with the list, that's for sure. Is it going to be good? Not too sure. Time will tell, but Gita is definitely one of those cards where I feel like there'll be those niche situations where you can build a deck around it and it'll be pretty clutch. We're also getting Letter of Encouragement, bit of a comeback card. Similar to Raihan, you can only use it if one of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. You get to search your deck for 3 basic energy cards and put them right into your hand though, which is pretty clutch. So like Chin-Pow, wanting to get a bunch of energy out, maybe just include this as a one-off. You can search it with a Rita and then search out 3 energy, charge them out with Excalibur. Pretty cool. Like, as a one-off card, why not? Ortega, look at your opponent's hand, choose a card you find there, put it on the bottom of your opponent's deck. Yep. Patrol Cap. I feel like we just went over these cards. I think they all kind of just got revealed last week, actually. But Patrol Cap, as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, cards in your deck can't be discarded by effects of your opponent's attacks, abilities, item cards, Pokemon tools, or supporter cards. I like that. So it's kind of just like breaking Iono, breaks Mill. It's good. It's really good. Also getting Patrol Cap, so as long as the Pokemon this is attached to is in the active spot, it's just going to prevent Mill, essentially. Things that are discarding with attacks, abilities, item cards, Pokemon tools, or supporter cards get prevented. It's pretty nice. So if people are trying to make Wugtrio work, just chuck 1 copy of this. Like if there's that one guy at your league that's like, this is my deck, I just mill you. And it's like, I have a hat. You win. Pokemon League headquarters. The attacks of basic Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's, cost 1 colorless energy more. Nice counter to Lost Box. We're getting to see Poppy move 2 energy from one of your Pokemon to another Pokemon, Rhyme, draw 3 cards, and then effectively Escape Rope, but just to your opponent. Team Star Grunt, I'm guessing that's just a alt art. Feel like we've seen this card before. Put an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon on top of their deck. Town Store just lets you search your deck for a tool card, put it into your hand. Pretty clutch. Since the errata making tool cards no longer item cards, they've been a little bit trickier to search, so having a stadium to do it is very handy, and the fact that this can get you like seal stones, like 4 seal stone, and then just use that to get something else, it's nice. And Vengeful Punch, when the Pokemon this is attached to is knocked out, put 4 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. Pretty cool. We do get to see the Obsidian Flames secret rares as well. Just gonna slowly scroll past these, so if you're interested in them, take a look. None of them really stand out to me. I do like Ninetales, so I might pick that one up. The Clef is also pretty cool. And like, nah, Pidgey's alright too. These though, like the Absol looks so good, but it's such a bad card. My thoughts on it at least. Maybe you have something in mind for Absol, and if you do, let me know in the comments down below. But so far, I'm not super impressed with it. Is that actually the Ice Cucus card? Okay, well, I have to buy that. That's amazing. All right, that's it for the set list review, though. Obsidian Flames, definitely an interesting one. Is it going to shake up the meta? I don't really think a lot. Like, there's some interesting cards. Pidgeot, cool. Charizard, definitely a deck to be made there. Everything else, though, it's just sort of feels a bit like filler, if I'm being honest. Gita, cool card, and like the stadiums are interesting. No new special energies. No real like single prize rogue decks that stand out to me. Like the King Gambit is interesting. Is it going to be super relevant though? Probably not. Being a stage 2, it's a little awkward to set up too. So you got to get the stage 2. You've got to get the stage 2. You've got to get the damage counters out. It's a lot of setup involved. That's my thoughts on it though. Maybe I'm missing something. Always happy to have a chat. Till next time though, take care of yourselves.